Seekers. This is Blake coming to you live from New Mexico. And joining me, as always, from Washington State, it's Bryn and Cody. How's it going, guys?
Hello, hello. I am a little overwhelmed thinking about trying to tackle this part two special. I think this is, I don't know, an interesting one for all of us. And I think everyone hunting for this one.
Yeah, I had such a tough time researching this one because it seemed like anytime I saw anything on a map that like had it was associated in any way with any of these icons, I was just instantly just like zooming in and checking every for like half an hour. I just couldn't. I had so much trouble getting anything done, and not just like shotgun approach. Just search for everything that looks like it could be interesting.
Yes, so we will
Cody and I,
be.
Kept getting drug off the
we, s-
topic.
we started to kind of bring up the topic here and there the last couple of days. And then we told ourselves, no, 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 we have to wait. So Cody and I have not discussed anything yet.
All right. So we'll be talking about the Appalachian Trail or the Appalachian Footpath Box today, which is a part two box in There's Treasure Inside by Jon Collins-Black. This is the final part two box chapter. And yeah, full transparency, I'm going into this like just doing a little bit of research. This is not the box that I have been focusing on. As most people know, we've been focusing on kind of the Pokemon box recently, and we've been focusing on the past and future box, me personally, for most of my efforts. I know, Cody, you've had a couple like Discord detectives and horseshoes and hand grenades on this topics. And Bryn, I don't know, when did you start working on the Appalachian Trail box, like just for this episode, I guess?
Oh, I mean, I've sat down with it a couple times.
Okay. So yeah, you
Yeah, no,
won't,
nothing crazy.
you're not going to get probably the most in-depth solves from us today. But we will be trying to bring people up to speed on kind of the key things in the map that we see. Because this is mainly revolving around a treasure map. This is by far the shortest part two chapter and the shortest chapter in general in the whole book. And so the assumption is, at least my assumption is, that most of the clues that are needed are on the treasure map, as Jon Collins-Black specifies. So that will be the main focus of what we're talking about in this episode today. You guys have other starting comments or disclaimers before we dive right in?
I was just distracted. I thought I had solved the coin.
Just a quick distraction from solving the coin instantly. Okay, very good.
Well, I thought the part the part two boxes switched to Roman numerals,
Right.
and then I'm like, what if all the coin lines kind of align with Roman numerals? And then I had looked at the Bitcoin or the past and future box one. I'm like, oh, if you reflect that over that pivot point, it kind of matches the same font as the X. Anyways,
All right.
moving on.
All right.
I just had a moment of excitement.
Okay, let's begin. Let's begin now. So yeah, we'll start with a quick chapter recap. Talk about any Forrest Fenn pick nuggets that we find within the chapter text, which again is just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 short paragraphs. So not too much to delve into there. We'll see. I don't know what you guys have come up with. And then we'll do a deep dive into the map, show some images. So again, part two box is always, if you're listening through an audio podcast, I guess it's fairly easy to follow along with the map if you have a book at home. But we'll be showing some images as well quite heavily during the course of the episode. So disclaimer there that if you're listening now, you could tune into the YouTube version and follow along with the images we're showing there if you'd like. All right, so quick summary of the Appalachian Footpath Box. We start out with a quote from Robert Motherwell. And I guess I can read the quote. Walk on a rainbow trail walk on a trail of song, and all about you will be beauty. There is a way out of every dark mist over a rainbow trail. Cody, do you know who Robert Motherwell is?
I do.
Oh, good.
He's an American abstract expressionist painter, printmaker. He was the editor of the Dada, Painters and Poets, an anthology.
Right. And he's also like a trained philosopher as well. Like that's what he went to school for. Is what I gathered from my quick Wikipedia search of who Robert Motherwell was. But
yeah, I actually spent quite a bit of time looking into him and some of his works. Didn't make any significant connections, and then it kind of has all left my head at this point and been replaced with bald mountains and blue smoky mountains. Hours and hours of just scouring Google Maps has replaced all of that knowledge I had.
All right. So after that quote, then JCB starts talking about what I call fun facts about the Appalachian Trail. So it covers 14 states. It's approximately 2,000 miles in length. And if you were to hike the whole thing, it would be 450,000 feet of elevation change. It starts in Georgia and ends in the White Mountains of New Hampshire. Actually, in Maine, is what I found. When I first looked at White Mountains, that kind of pointed me to New Hampshire, but I think the actual end of the trail is in Maine at Katahdin Mountain seems to be the terminus of the Appalachian Trail going south to north. Part of the trail transverses the Blue Mountain Range near Asheville, North Carolina, where JCB grew up, and he had access to parts of the Appalachian Trail there because it's nearby Asheville, where the Appalachian Trail passes through. He kind of has good memories of doing hikes around that area where he talks about the smells of dogwoods, rhododendron, and mountain laurel, and the sounds of light breezes, squirrels, birds, crickets, and cicadas. He says it provided him a quiet joy during his teenage years, and thinking back and thinking about it now, he thinks this would be a magical place to leave a treasure. Then he dives into talking about the design of the treasure box itself. He says it's the most ornate box, and it's unique in that it's both a puzzle box and a combination lock box made of carbon steel, stainless steel, and brass. He gives a little vignette about Seth Gould giving him a bolt sample that was colored blue, and that blue coloring could be used as accents for some of the boxes when they were initially talking about designs. Jon Collins-Black really liked that particular color and asked if he could use it on a more prominent feature of the box, which we can see on page 227, or kind of the whole front face of the box with some gold patterning. The background of that is this blue colored steel. As well as the knob on top, which is, I'm assuming, is part of that combination lock feature. Seth had not applied that technique to a larger piece of metal, and he didn't know if it'd work, but sure enough, he was able to incorporate the blue coloring of the steel into the box, and Jon Collins-Black saw that when he received the boxes from Seth. There's no specific treasure items that are listed in this chapter that are in the box. So there's no particular treasure pieces listed at all in this chapter. But he says out of the 4 smaller boxes, this one does contain more items from the items that are featured in the part 1 section of the book than any of the other boxes. Jon Collins-Black then talks about coming full circle, starting with the treasure map that his son made in chapter 1, and this being the final chapter, leaving us with the finale that he has created a treasure map himself, Jon Collins-Black. That's about it. Anything critical that I missed there that's not a picked nugget?
I will add, I read that. So in the print version, or at least in our first and third editions, he says that the trail stretches over almost 2,000 miles of public land. And I read that in the ebook, he updated that to, oh boy, what was it? 2,200 miles of public land.
Okay.
So interesting that he updated that. And maybe it's just because someone caught an error and that is more correct.
So
Okay.
the first one he said over 2,000, and he updated to say over 2,200.
It went from almost 2,000 to
Okay,
I
almost
don't know if
2,000.
it was over 2,200 or 2,200.
Okay, no, that's an you're yeah. My thought was at first I thought you said you changed it from over 2,000 to over 2,200, which to me is like, if it's over 2,200, over 2,000 is also correct enough that I would just, it seems like it would be a weird thing to choose to update. But if it said up to 2,000 or under 2,000, updated it to over almost, then
2,000.
then that makes sense. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, that's a good catch. Did not
Very good catch.
notice that in my version 1 book. All right, FFPNs then for the main text of the chapter.
Yeah, should we start with the title?
Sure, that's my first
Please do.
FFPN.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so why do we think it's called the Appalachian footpath instead of trail?
I don't know, but there are footprints on the map, and so I think it must hold some value to call it the Appalachian Footpath Box compared to the Appalachian Trail, which he references it as the Appalachian Trail in the chapter and doesn't. I think maybe there is one reference to footpath. I think when he's describing he describes the trails he was hiking on as when I traveled along its soft pressed ground. But I don't recall him actually mentioning the footpath part of that. But I did, like, that was one of the first things I Googled was who is calling it the Appalachian Footpath. And I couldn't find very many references to it being called that at all. So yeah, I caught that as well, that it seemed a little strange to me.
I think I'm taking it as maybe it's not exactly on the trail, like a trail that kind of stems off from it. Maybe that would be classified as an Appalachian footpath. I don't know.
The other thing that I found was it is, and again, I don't know if it's in the, I don't remember Google research versus reading now. Sorry, I have the book here, but I'm not going to read it live. It is a foot traffic only trail, the Appalachian Trail itself. So that does kind of make it unique, that it seems like the whole thing, you can traverse the whole thing as it's only a footpath. I'm assuming there's no biking or horseback riding, I'm assuming, based on what I've read online. And other people may be able to clarify that, but calling it the footpath for that reason kind of makes sense.
Yeah, I read that as well. And so I think maybe what I would take from that is that it being walking only is a hint at a clue here.
Yeah.
To me, it's one of those things where I'd probably lean towards thinking it has some sort of impact clue wise, but at the same time, if the solution is eventually revealed and he's like, oh, I just chose it because it kind of just sounded like a more literary term, more hoity toity, I wouldn't be upset about it, I think.
Right. Yeah.
But I would lean more towards there's a reason for it than just fancier language.
Yeah, I think I'm in agreement with you. How much you can gain out of that information, though, I haven't been able to make any headway
Yeah.
into what or how that would be helpful. All right. You had another comment on that, Bryn?
I was just gonna make the next move down to the quote
Okay,
because I'm
go
sure
for it.
we all thought that was interesting too. So the quote that Blake read, the Robert Motherwell quote, this is the only part 2 chapter to have a quote, which I think is particularly stand out because we had a quote with every chapter in part 1, and then they stopped for the first 3 boxes and then started again here. So this feels like a very intentional quote. It must have a lot of significance for him to want to break the formatting here and include a quote specifically talking to this box. So I I don't know. When you first read this, I mean, says trail, so that's exciting. You get rainbow trail.
Mhm.
I mean, I guess I'm gonna start off by saying this whole, not only this whole chapter, but I feel like this whole book, I don't think there's gonna be anything that's a clue in this book that you can get from just like Googling words that he has written. Like Rainbow Trail, for example. You're not going to be able to Google Rainbow Trail and make any progress towards what this means, in my opinion. I don't think there's anything in the book that you can Google and get a clue out of it. He's going to have more clever solves than that. So I don't know, like, is the rainbow the theme here that we're supposed to be understanding? It seems to me like it's a quote about like finding your way out of a hard situation, like kind of finding that brighter light at the end of the tunnel, which, you know, is also kind of tricky to apply to this map as well. But I just think it's going to have a lot of significance in the solve.
Yeah, I think I'm in agreement with that. Just thinking about the quote, like maybe there is a certain area of side trails around the Appalachian Trail that has different color names, 2 or more, let's say, that would apply to this rainbow trail concept is kind of one thing I'm thinking about. And then the same with the trail of song as well. If there's some way to make a connection to a song reference, a musical reference that I know we've been desperately searching for the other boxes as well, and the lion's share, because he is a musician. I mean, I would be shocked if after all 5 boxes are found, there's not some sort of heavy music clue associated with one of them. We've been talking about it a lot for the Pokemon box, but if your whole background and first multiple decades of your life are your career is music, like how can you not incorporate something significant into this book? So anyway, I agree with you, Bryn, that there's something significant there that I haven't found yet.
And he does like when he's talking about kind of like his experience on the trail, like I think it is very intentional that he's calling out the different senses of how he's experiencing the trail, which one of those includes the sounds, so serenaded by the ambient sounds of the light breeze, scurrying squirrels, etc., etc. So I think there is a component of combining multiple senses into this experience.
Yeah, I caught on to that as well. The sounds and the smells. I think we kind of get the sights from his initial description of the Appalachian Trail generally. It's beautiful, romantic, sometimes mystical trail crossing over bald hills, blue mountains, mossy jungle-like forests, and onto the rugged landscape of the White Mountains. So that's kind of where I put together the visual part of that, because yeah, there's not. And then he dives straight into the smells and straight into the sounds after that.
Since you brought up that sentence, I'll talk about one of my FFPNs I had written down, which is basically just it's that same sentence. crossing over bald hills, blue mountains, mossy jungle-like forests. Um, and the idea of the FFPN is basically connections between the narrative and the photos in the chapter. So like bald hills seems to me like an obvious one. Talks about bald hills in the narrative there. And then there's also the icon on the map that a lot of people are interpreting to be a bald person to represent basically probably the word bald. There's about 1,000 things on the map called bald something. So it doesn't really help narrow things down that much. But I thought it was interesting that he has what I would believe to be an icon indicating bald, and then also talk about bald hills in the narrative. And then the other one was Blue Mountains. I thought that was particularly interesting because, and I know it's going to go back to kind of the how much did Seth Gould know versus how much did JCB instruct him, but obviously the coin and the box have that heavy, prominent blue feature to it that he was specifically talking about in the narrative, and then also the Blue Mountains. Don't know if there's a connection to be made there, or if that's a coincidence, but I feel like if something's referenced in both the narrative and in the map or pictures, that there's a pretty good chance it's an important part of the solve.
Yep, I agree. I agree with that as well. No consternation at all between us.
You're in a very agreeable mood tonight, Blake.
I know.
Just wait till you hear some of Bryn and I's hot takes, and we'll see if we're still in agreement.
Okay.
I was down doing some research. I came up to the kitchen. I was about to tell Bryn about how I feel like I have some hot takes that are going to get questionable responses. And just as I'm about to tell her that, she goes, "What if the map's not a map?" It's like, no. You might have hotter takes. You might have hotter takes than I do.
I don't think it's a map.
Okay. All right.
We'll get into that.
Yeah, I had only chapter to start with a quote. I ask you not to judge it harshly. I mean, he's kind of said that in other part 2 boxes as well, particularly the past and future one.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's necessarily a clue. At least I haven't put together a piece that's a clue, but I thought that was interesting. But what is done was also part of that. Should I have made the path to this treasure's location less obvious? Perhaps, but what is done. And since I basically admitted to you that this treasure is somewhere along the Appalachian Trail, all that's left for you to do is follow this map. I don't really have commentary on that, sorry.
I do.
I think it's all clues.
Okay.
I guess I don't know. I don't know at what point in this episode to say it, but I think in general, all this solves for everything. The part 2s, the lion's share, are going to be very clever, in a way that, like, when you solve the puzzle, it's going to feel very simple. To me, I think the more simple a solve, the stronger it is, the more clever it is. And I think to get such a clever solve, everything is really going to have to, like, play into it. Not everything, but, like, I think if he's just kind of putting in this filler text, I think it's there for a reason. And I think the way that he kind of speaks to introduce these, like with the past and future word search and now introducing this map. I mean, I've been able to pick up on some stuff with the past and future where he's saying those things for a particular reason. And so I think all of this is very intentional as well.
Right. I'll just do my last one just so I can be out of the way in case you guys have more. I just want to mention that it references the other part 2 boxes. He talks about how the previous ones are based on a poem, a fictional story inspired by a childhood adventure. So a poem is the Forrest Fenn box, a fictional story inspired by a childhood adventure is the Pokemon box, and a few games is the past and future box. So I don't want to get into past and future box talk, but he does reference those. And what are a few games for the past and
I had
future
that,
box?
I had that same thought.
The cryptogram and the word search, that's a couple of games. A few is at least one more. So what's that third game? At least that's what the question I'm asking after reading this chapter.
Right. Yeah. Did you have anything else to add to that, Cody?
No, I had the same thought, where pretty much just a few games, and I could think of the two.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I don't want to turn it into a past and future conversation,
Right.
as much as I know Blake would enjoy that. I did have one comment on Blake's previous FFPN, and that was basically, I'm just like, come on, man, with the word basically in there. Like, nothing can ever just be like, he can't just ever speak in absolutes. He has to say, and since I've basically admitted to you that this treasure is somewhere along the Appalachian Trail, instead of just saying, I've admitted to you that it's somewhere along the Appalachian Trail. And while I still think it would be quite a pull the rug out from under you move to be like, well, I said basically, not actually, it still just gives me that tinge of doubt, right? It's like, just say it. What are you gaining by putting the word basically in that sentence, other
Well,
than confusing me?
I would argue that maybe that's his out for like if it's on a trail right next to as a footpath right next to the Appalachian Trail itself.
Yeah, that's my
Okay.
thinking as well. Um, and it doesn't have to be exactly on the Appalachian Trail, but the side trails going off of it, I agree with Bryn. That is definitely in play in my mind.
All right, I buy that.
Yeah. Um, I think kind of the main thing I took away from this introduction is this kind of mystical, magical mystery theme. So he says, beautiful, romantic, sometimes mystical when talking about the trail. He later describes it as a magical place. And then I think maybe most importantly, he's not saying what's in the box. So he's wanting there to be a sense of mystery around what the items are. So why would he choose this one box to not tell us what the items are when he has throughout the book? And I think it's all playing into a sense of mystery and I don't know. I mean, I know there's like all sorts of like myths and folklore around the trail and stuff like that, but I do think that there's going to be like a greater abstract, mysterious approach taken to this solve, which is kind of why I'm not taking the map necessarily at face value. I think there's a lot of layers to this onion.
Yeah, I didn't think too much about that. Why he didn't include any treasure items other than to keep the chapter short, right? In every other chapter, we have some discussion about a treasure item and the history behind it. And yeah, what's the reasoning for making this one short? Is it because it was the last one he did and he was tired of writing the book?
I kind of got the impression that, in an ideal world, he wanted this one to be just the map, like that the map is the whole thing, and to not muddy the waters with too much text for people like us to parse through and try and come up with ways that it could possibly involve clues. Um, but then he had some stuff he wanted to say, so he did add some narrative, but like you said, kind of kept it short.
That's interesting because I think in general, I keep falling back on like people are not reading the narratives with the chapters enough. I would say, especially with past and future box, like I think everyone's just so deep in the word search and not going back and just finding very important critical context in the text as a refresher and kind of just to level set. And so I guess I kind of took the same approach to this as well, where it's like I need to really put more emphasis on what he's telling us about the puzzle that he's presenting rather than just the puzzle itself.
Yeah, I think I'm more in Cody's camp on this one, that the map maybe is more standalone, and I'm grasping at straws for content from the words, but I think it's healthy to have both approaches, so this is good.
Yes, we balance each other out.
Also, can we talk about Asheville? So in Pokemon Box, they left on their road trip from Statesville. Where is he from? I can't remember. Like, where was his childhood home? I guess I'm confused by Asheville versus Statesville at this point.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that off the top of my head, actually.
So I guess to me, I mean, maybe they moved, and I don't know if I missed that earlier in the book, if he talked about that or something. But if not, it would seem that one of these cities is forced, either Asheville or Statesville, for Pokemon Box or this box. Sorry, I don't mean to make you search around for stuff. I was just hoping one of you remembered.
No, I don't remember off the top of my head. I'm looking back at the Michael Jordan chapter to see, is that chapter he talks quite a bit about, meeting Michael Jordan. I can't remember exactly where that was, if that was in Statesville or Asheville at that time. But growing up in North Carolina. Anyway, we will have to revisit that. Put a pin in that.
Yeah, sorry. I guess I should have just looked into that before I just brought it up here.
That's all right.
I probably could have just provided an answer. Whoops.
Right.
I got one more FFPN.
Okay.
That's not even really a real FFPN, but something about when he's talking about this chapter coming full circle, or this last part 2 box coming full circle to the start of the book again,
right,
is still sticking with me. And I get that his point is that he's drawing a map now, and then in chapter 1 he talked about his son drawing a map, but something just doesn't feel fully resolved there with me. Like that's part of, like, there's a reason he kind of brought that up, and that's part of something else. And I have one idea that, so it stuck with me for like a good few days, and then I came up with something that scratched that itch a little bit, and I'll talk about that later.
Okay.
I agree that really stuck with me. I think the full circle component is going to be very critical, whether that has something to do with like incorporating, like a child's imagination. What is his child drawing on a map of LA? Certainly it's not factual. Is that hinting at kind of his approach to this map? Or does full circle mean something with like, are we supposed to be thinking about 360 degrees and like using certain degrees to navigate us that all equal 360, something with the geometry of that. I just think full circle is going to be a big part of the solve.
Interesting. I guess along those lines, at least while I was reading the chapter, because he says that this box contains more of the treasure items that are covered in the part 1 section of the box than any other small box, that just rang a little bell to say, if we ever decide, once the first small box is solved, how much it's reaching back into the part 1 content or not, this was kind of a signal to me, like, well, maybe this one, if any of them do, this one might have more connections back to the main text, which I know is a controversial topic. But I guess your mention of that, Brendan, brought that to my mind as well. Just thinking about part 1, part 2 connections, if any, this would signal that to me.
Totally.
Right. All out of FFPNs. Should we talk about the treasure map?
Oh boy, this is going to be a.
Do we have anything to say about the coin? I just want to make sure we don't totally skip over the coin.
No, I don't. I don't have a good, clever solve for the coin. I mean, it's very similar to the Pokemon Box one, except the circle is at the intersection instead of at the end. A little bit different angle, certainly, but
yeah,
I think I did hear some chatter online, people talking about whether that the box might be prone to rust with the type of metals he listed, but I think that's something I think that's applicable to all the boxes, not this one in particular.
Okay.
Yeah, on the latest episode of that American Treasure podcast, I think he was very thorough in explaining that he took a lot of time in research and really made sure that the boxes were going to be well preserved because he views those as, in a lot of cases, more valuable than some of the treasures that are actually included in the boxes as well. So I guess I would assume none of the boxes will be rusting.
Maybe they're vacuum sealed.
Maybe.
Yeah. A lot hinging on the first find. A lot.
Yeah.
All right. Map time.
Yeah. So I was thinking, do we want to? I have some comments about very specific things, and I have some comments that are very general to the map. Do we want to start with one or the other, speaking kind of generalities, or start with specifics and then go one way or the other? Also, fun fact, some of my generality comments and some of my specific comments completely contradict each other.
All right.
I have some of those too.
I'm like, I don't think it's going to be like this. And then my next specific thing is like exactly that.
I guess I'll let you two decide on what you think is going to be a better approach. Because the way I've approached this is just going top, left to right, kind of a grid pattern down, looking at all the anomalies on the map and all the images on the map. So I haven't taken maybe a more general approach like you guys have. So I'll let you decide what seems to be the best approach.
Yeah, I think maybe for me at least, I'd like to start with a couple generalities.
Okay.
And then work my way through contradicting myself for the rest of the episode.
Excellent. Bryn, what
do you think, Bryn?
What's your thought?
That's fine. I would have probably said the opposite, but I'm happy to do that, and
we could do the opposite. If you want to do the opposite.
No. Now I'm already changing my thought process. So let's start with a couple.
I don't want to screw you up.
No. Let's do that, and then I'll just kind of give a couple thoughts, and we can dive into the items.
Okay. Do you want to go first? I feel like I'm kind of antsy to hear what you're gonna say.
Well, I need to think of what some of my general thoughts are here, but I guess in general, I will say that I don't think we're supposed to be taking this as a literal map. I think that's too straightforward, and I don't think it's a clever enough solve for kind of what I've been gathering based off of his other boxes and the work that's been done to, I feel like, make some decent progress in those boxes so far. So I can't imagine that he gets to this last, I don't know if it's fair to call it like a grand finale box, but I don't think he's going to kind of do all these very clever, witty things that all have a theme and then get to this one and be like, oh, I'm going to just show a section of the map, of the trail map, and then just put some symbolism around it that geographically relates to the stuff around it. I can't, because I think a lot of that solve is just then like what we've been doing, Cody, looking at a map.
Yeah. Brute force.
It's just really a brute force approach. You just try to find as many things that stick. Which in a way, I guess, is similar to the Forrest Fenn box, but I feel like it's even more just like black and white than that. Like you kind of just have to look, see what sticks, and then look for the next layer. And I just think he's going to be more clever than that, than us just trying to match up a trail section to a map. Obviously, easier said than done. But I don't know. That's just not it to me. And if it is, fair enough. And I don't know. But yeah, I certainly don't think that this dotted line is like a trail.
I have thoughts that are... Go ahead, Blake.
I'll just be quick. I think in my mind, it could be the former, being trying to match up these landmarks to things on a map, only because it's different than all the other chapters, because he's using pictures which you can interpret instead of having to put specific words like we see in the Forrest Fenn. So that's my counter argument. One, counter argument two is, even in our interview, he wasn't convinced that his solves were clever, right? We asked him about what solve he was most proud of, and he couldn't pick one. And I mentioned, which one do you think is most clever or you're most proud of? And he's like, I don't know if any of them are clever. So just that's always been in my mind in terms of going back to keeping it simple, because that's what he said. Then again, he's worked on it for 5 years, so he might just be over it, right? And they are very clever. Mm-hmm. So, sorry. That's all I wanted to say, Cody.
Yeah, I think I'm more with Bryn. I've got more specific things to touch on here real quick about why I'm leaning towards thinking that the line's not accurate if you're just like overlay this map with an Appalachian Trail map. And at the same time, why I think not necessarily, I think that like these icons, he could be using them like more on the metaphorical side than the literal side. And that would be something he might be able to get away with, but I don't think they're going to literally be like, the bald guy, Bald Mountain, and the apple guy's like Apple River. And it's like that all the way through this whole thing.
I'm not gonna like all my solves then.
Well, that's why I said I'm contradicting myself, because all of like my ideas are exactly that.
Okay.
But I don't think that's what it's going to be. I'm not ready to make the leap that Bryn's made, that it's some grand solution that has nothing to do with it being a map. But some of my thoughts were, if this is truly a map and the pictures are more or less, you're choosing from even 5 or 10 words for like an apple or a bushel or a basket or a orchard for each icon. When you have thousands, tens of thousands of people all scouring a couple thousand miles of trail on different map sites, it just feels like through just like statistically, someone would just like come across it very quickly if that's how this was laid out. Okay. And then that's not even to mention that I'm sure that there are people out there who are more tech savvy than us who can write a program that clips pieces of map and like spits out like what's the 50 pieces of map that are the closest to this, or what spit out, X number of locations that have any of these keywords that I've listed within a 10-mile radius. Okay. I feel like that feels to me like something that someone could do in an afternoon if they had the skills to do it. Mm-hmm. And so it just needs to be, the answer needs to be a little more encrypted than that, I think, which is why I'm leaning towards maybe not as far as Bryn is willing to go, but definitely that like, essentially it just needs to be a little bit more encrypted. At least than what I thought, like when I first looked at it and just started Googling Bald Mountain on Appalachian Trail. Right. The other thing I wanted to mention is the scale of the map, because we obviously don't have a sense of scale. I think that if you're treating it as a true map, it needs to, no matter what the scale is, it needs to maintain that scale. So I don't think it would be fair to be like, the bald guy's here and a mile away, the apple basket's here, but then 50 miles away is the skier up here. And it just like doesn't follow the scale of the map, but it's just like, I don't know, you're supposed to draw lines between them maybe and like find a central location. I just feel like the scale needs to be 1-to-1 through the whole thing. So then it becomes, is this scale, say the scale's 50 miles by 50 miles is the shape of the map. Or the other option is, say it's like a 1/4 mile by 1/4 mile. I think there's pros to cons to each of those. If it's really big and it's like 50 miles by 50 miles, the advantage as a puzzle maker is it's a lot easier to find these icons you want to put in there, right? But then at the same time, if it's that big, how do you narrow down like a realistic search location at the end of the trail? And then obviously vice versa, if you make it small enough that you can narrow it down to like 100 square yard search location at the end, now you're kind of, as a puzzle maker, your arm's kind of twisted to where you need to find these 15 identifying landmarks somehow within this 1/4 mile span. It's like, what are you in like a downtown city block to find that many things on a trail?
Right.
So it's another reason why I feel like to treat this as a true map, there's just some things that jump out to me as like logistical hurdles from the creation side of things. So I'm about to contradict myself with pretty much everything I say from here on out, But when I really sit back and think about it without getting all excited looking at Google Maps, I think that there needs to be more to it than just it's a map. These are fairly straightforward metaphors for real life things at this scale, and this is the trail you need to follow. End of monologue.
Yeah, I think personally I'm not quite set on the map having to be scaled correctly. I think it can have differing scales depending on the clues that are in it. That's how I've been approaching it anyway.
So give me like an example of a real life situation, how it would map out on here, not scaled correctly.
Right. I think in my mind the dotted line, the dotted line path is probably a different scale and more boots on the groundish compared to all of the small logos, except for the ones that are maybe near that dotted line path trail. I think there's a zoomed out version with a lot of these, pictograms that are associated, and then I think boots on the ground has other of these pictograms associated with it, the ones that are near the trail path here.
Okay. So you think one possible solution would be basically to compartmentalize it into two different things, where any of the icons that are off the trail there would be like get you to basically like the begin here triangle.
Exactly.
And then from there, the few that are on the dotted line are boots on the ground and follow this general shape to get to the other triangle.
Yep. That's my first pass at this, and what I think seems reasonable to me.
I guess I could buy that.
Yay.
We're all in such an agreeable mood. One other thing I was actually going to mention that you kind of just brought up there is, and I guess it falls more under the general category, is there obviously are many icons that are not on this dotted line, and then a few that are close enough that it feels like they are on the dotted line, like the dog, the tree and the looking glass, and the what I'm calling the bolt of fabric. And I'm sure everyone has different names for a lot of these. And then probably the oh my gosh, what's the word for that? Feather. The feather and the bear are pretty much on it too. But that's one thing I had written down for like my general thought process is what's the reasoning behind having some on the line and some not on the line?
Right.
Bryn disagrees that the bear's on the line.
No, the feather. On the line? She hates the feather. Which feather?
No, that's the feather. That's an arrow, right? There's a feather and then there's an arrow.
Oh yeah, it's totally an arrow. I've not been focusing much on that icon, so it's like my first time looking closely at it.
Very biased to a bolt of fabric for his quilting theme.
Not the cigarette rolling paper, you mean?
Isn't it just a scroll?
I think it's a bolt of fabric. I don't know. I'm gonna stroll on down to Joann Fabrics and ask an expert.
Too late, they're gone.
Yeah, they're closing some stores.
So
news segment.
I don't think I'm doxing myself. I used to work at Joann Fabric.
He was very popular at Joann's because he was so tall he could reach the top shelves.
It's easy because none of the old ladies would come to me for questions.
Genius strategy, actually. Since we're talking about the general map, I guess I want to ask you guys, do you think there's anything to the border of the map? Any clues hidden in the graphic of the border?
This is going to be an unpopular opinion, but I think that the border, and here's the unpopular part, the compass at the bottom, I think are just random AI.
I agree.
Ooh, really? Yeah. Really? Oh, people are not going to like that compass take.
Well, I was going to start with the compass. I don't want to mess up your flow, Blake.
Let's start with the compass. I want to talk about that too. I mean, we've talked about this in a previous episode. because of that little fish, right?
Hmm.
What I'm calling the fish.
Oh yeah.
I guess should we start looking at images now?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna pull up the screen. All right, pulling up the compass. You guys can see that, right?
Yep.
So yeah, this little fish down here, and I think it's more clear zoomed out, honestly, is that it slightly looks red to me. And this isn't my own idea, this is from Discord. It slightly looks red to me, and I think I agree with you, Cody, that it's an AI generated compass. Like, it seems clear to me. One thing I was looking at right before the episode started is it looks like there was some words here that I'm circling. A word here. I'm wondering if changing some contrast might pick out what that was, but it was probably edited out. And this AI image seemingly looks like it was pasted in to this graphic or edited a little bit around it. But yeah, I think the compass is a red herring, if that wasn't clear. I don't think this compass should be used for directionality at all. I haven't thought quite as much about the borders, but I don't know if you guys have comments about the compass as well.
Real quick, we keep
Yeah.
using the word red herring, and I feel like can we define what a red herring is real quick? Because in my mind, a red herring is something that's
It's-
like intentionally put there to misdirect you. And we keep using that kind of synonymously with what I would think is just like something that isn't a clue, but it's not like I think the compass, he just put a compass on there with like, it's not part of the clue. It just looks like it fits on a treasure map, and it's not necessarily meant to throw you off.
Yeah, that's a good point. What is a red herring?
Yeah.
But I think it also could be there to make you think that this is a map with orientation,
Yeah.
where I
Well, I
would
think that's
maybe
why it's
argue there's not.
well, that's I think why it's an important distinction to make if you're because I would argue that it is not a clue, but also not a red herring. And I would even go as far as to say I don't think JCB is going out of his way to put what I understand to be red herrings in the book. I think there's a lot that just aren't clues and it's just filler stuff or
Yeah.
interesting things. But I don't think he's gonna like talk a whole bunch about South Dakota in one chapter in hopes that you think it's in South Dakota and it's not.
Yeah, you're correct, Cody, that it's something like a clue or an argument that is intended to mislead or distract from the main topic or issue. So I think in this case, because he put a compass on the map, your first gut would be, okay, so let's orient it north this way because of the way that this compass is drawn. And now he's explicitly saying this is a red herring. Like, yes, I put a compass on the map, but please ignore it. In this case, and I think I'm in a general agreement that I don't think he's putting a lot of red herrings. When I was browsing the Discord, there are a lot of comments about, I think, symbol X, Y, and Z is a red herring. And I just can't get on board with that. And maybe that's because I'm too new to treasure hunting, or I don't know, but I think I'm in agreement that I don't like that attitude that there would be intentional misleading clues here.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess to me it's like if we have this map here that's solely based on symbolism, I don't think he's just going to slap a compass on there for the sake of slapping a compass on to like have it represent a map. But I would then treat it as a red herring of he has put it on to represent a map, but also to maybe add the layer of, like we said, it gets you to think that there is a north that you can be, orienting yourself to when there's not, which is why he would call it out as a red herring.
Yeah. And to be fair, I don't think he even put north on there, right? It's just
No.
an unlabeled compass.
Right.
Yeah, I think some people have said this kind of looks like an S on the left side here, but again, I think it's just AI noise.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if
Okay.
you're going to do that, like, why just make it an S that's hard to read? I guess I wouldn't understand that reasoning either.
Right. Right.
Why if he meant for it to be an S, why do that?
Yeah, like why wouldn't you
Yeah.
just put the S
Yeah.
there?
It'd be more clear. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. All right. Well, I'm glad we're all in agreement there.
Yes. We all agree, but I'm sure a lot of people will disagree, and we're going to hear about it in the comments.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think in terms of the map edge, again, I think if it's an AI generated image, I don't know, maybe it'd be easy, maybe it'd be hard to hide stuff. I think the most prominent one I've seen mentioned is potentially the letter or the number 6 up here in the corner. But that's a single number, and if we're looking for what's the term, pareidolia or whatever, looking for objects in places where they don't exist. I feel like it could be a case of that, but anyway, I haven't done a lot of research or a deep dive into the history of Discord to see what other people have picked out in terms of edge clues, but yeah, I think not on board with anything hidden in those edges that I've seen so far. That's convincing to me.
And I would say, I think if you were going to ask AI to generate an image of a crumpled border that goes across a whole page, again, it just kind of feels like statistically, it's almost going to be difficult for it to not have some shadow somewhere that looks like a number.
Mm-hmm.
So I would agree. To me, that's more AI noise.
Okay.
Occam's razor.
All right. So that was a fairly easy conversation then.
Yeah. I have been in and out of the Discord over the last couple of months. I know how many people have been talking about strong feelings on like the compass. So that's why I keep mentioning that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm surprised that us three agree on it, and that
overall, it's very reminiscent of the compass in chapter 13, the shipwreck one.
yeah.
Oh, interesting.
So I guess that was kind of what I needed to see to be like, okay, I'm not going to put too much into this.
Yeah, let me take a sidebar. There was a video by Matt that just got posted, I think, yesterday or today. It's the @ TT. I'll try to make sure we get a link in here, but and I'll probably talk about it in more detail in a future episode. Not the Appalachian Trail, but he actually did an analysis where he put all the images that we think are AI generated into a AI detection tool. And all of the images came back like very high confidence that they were generated by Midjourney, which is a particular AI tool, except for the basketball layup picture.
Ooh.
That came out as likely not AI generated for some reason.
One thing I'd be very interested to do would be to take one of those AI photos that it says is very likely to have been generated by, would you say Journey?
Midjourney, yep.
Midjourney, and throw it into like a photo editor and add some little tidbits, like little sixes, like we were saying in this
Matt
AI.
Did that.
Is that what he did?
He did that, and it didn't
change.
It still said AI generated. So
exactly.
it totally can escape. At least the detector that he's using seems to be able to detect. He put some words at the bottom of that Art Smith dancers picture, and it still said it was AI generated even after editing. So anyway, I highly recommend this video, and I'll post the link, and we'll be talking about it more in a future episode as well. But a very scientific approach to some of the main questions people have about the book. It's not just about the AI images. He has some other cool things in there too. So anyway, shout out to that Matt and his video.
Yeah, it sounds like a great resource.
So we should use that AI generator and ask it to make us a few different compasses and see what it spits out.
Right. So yeah, if it seems like it was Midjourney, there's maybe a list of 8 to 10 different AI image generation tools that it tests against and makes an assessment. And so it seemed like, based on that video from Matt, Jon Collins-Black is using Midjourney for these images, which makes sense on the timeline because Midjourney was kind of the first, I'd say, publicly available popular one that got used. And, when I was doing AI generation image stuff, that was the first one I used as well. So the timeline lines up to when he's writing this book, when he's making the images, that would be the tool. There's a lot more available now. But yeah, like you said, Bryn, going back and say, make a compass and a ship and see what it comes up with. We're new versions ahead now, so it might not be the same, but it would be a good exercise, I think.
Yeah, I'm excited to watch that video that you're talking about.
All right. Anybody have a favorite next object?
Do we want to? Oh, I see. Are you just gonna scroll versus pulling up individual pictures?
I was gonna scroll, yeah, just so it's
Yeah.
a little
Okay.
more interactive, but we could do. I can pull up images too. It's not a big deal.
Well, no, we'll just scroll.
Okay.
I guess. Yeah. Yeah. Let's just go left to right,
Okay.
like we're reading a book. Unless you
Right.
have any preference, Cody.
Yeah, Cody.
No preference.
No preference. So we're okay starting in the upper left here, which has the footprints and the car north words that you can see in the image pretty well, I think. You guys have thoughts about either the footprints or the words car north?
So I kind of took this two ways.
Okay.
First, is this simply saying like you have parked your car somewhere and then you're gonna walk like south to your begin here point, like a trailhead. So that was my first thought. Second, is this telling us, if this is a map, that this is north? Is this cardinal north? And so then we're supposed to be orienting everything basically at like 45-degree angle for this corner to be north, which is kind of interesting because the two triangle lines kind of orient themselves, like the long edge kind of orients itself that way, pointing north as well. Yeah, I don't know. It's almost like those two triangles could come together and become its own compass in a way. So I guess that's going to be kind of this whole discussion of this map. Is everything is
What does
heavy
it mean?
sigh? I don't know.
I my first approach was actually exactly the same as yours. That I'm like, okay, we know that the treasure is not more than 3 miles away from a road. Your car is parked here, and you go north. And I did exactly what you said, Bryn. As I turned the book 45 degrees, and then started my Google mapping based on that orientation. I really
So you're saying,
yeah.
Good.
I really like the idea that that stands for cardinal north, though, as well. I did not make that connection.
So Blake, you're saying, if I'm understanding correctly, you're saying you park your car and go north, and Brenda's saying your car is north of you, so you park your car and go south. Or are you guys both saying you go south from your car?
Go south. Yep.
Okay.
You follow the little footprints.
The car is north of where you're walking right now. That's
Gotcha.
how I'm interpreting this. Yeah.
Yeah.
The only other thing I thought the same thing as that. North Carolina is something else that came to mind.
Yes.
It's kind of like a funky little treasure map way of indicating North Carolina to the upper left-hand side of the map for some reason. Couldn't find any real features with the name Barefoot, and then this is going to my being I can't think of the word now.
Contradictory.
Yeah, contradicting myself. Sorry. Couldn't find anything that directly said Barefoot. I found a couple of things called like Naked Mountain or something, which kind of fits with like the just barefoot tracks.
Okay.
And then this is dumb, but I'm just gonna talk about everything I looked into at this point. Yeah. Barefoot wine. Only ties I found were to California.
All right. Well, that's a good. Or shoes and hand grenades, maybe.
Oh no, it just reminds me of the logo.
Okay. So.
This book is just riddled with ads.
Naked Mountain.
I'm the only one who knows the locations of the treasure. It's just me and the 50 corporate sponsors that I worked with.
I do like what Blake had said earlier about this re-emphasizing the footpath connection.
Yeah, I do too. But it also, again, kind of goes back to the footpath versus what if the whole thing is a footpath.
So remember he mentions that it's the soft path that he walked along. Let me find the quote. Sorry. When I traveled along its soft pressed ground. So I'm wondering, potentially this is a clue that it's not like a gravel path. That'd be too sharp to walk on without shoes. I don't know. I'm stretching here, but
yeah, I looked up kind of what classified as what, and I mean it's pretty obvious, but like cement, gravel, anything paved versus like beauty bark, dirt. It needs no explanation, but I felt like it was hinting at. I'm not familiar enough with the trails. I guess I picture like the Appalachian Trail itself being all dirt. I can't picture part of it being paved. Maybe it is. But I think it's hinting at the section that it's hidden on, or the path that you'll be walking on is a dirt path.
I'm kind of noticing that the heels are kind of highlighted here. So I'm wondering if that's another keyword we can keep in mind is heel. Just because of the pattern that we can see here. I'm trying to cross-reference like what is actually visible in the printed book compared to kind of this higher resolution image that we have here from the ebook. Before I make conclusions about that statement. But
it's an excellent gait analysis on the heel strikes there.
Yeah, so it seems a little highlighted there. I don't know if that means anything, but just pointing it out. All right, other commentary about this part?
I was just doing some live research because it just occurred to me. I was wondering if there's like any parts of the Appalachian Trail where like hikers would traditionally like hike barefoot. If there's like a tradition to do that in like an area where it's like super soft. Didn't come up with anything in my 5 seconds of research since I last talked. But I did see here it says that some hikers called the Barefoot Sisters, Lucy and Susan, hiked the entire Appalachian Trail barefoot, both southbound and then northbound. So something else possibly worth looking into. Could be a connection there.
So many slivers.
It's a Hobbit approach. All right. Southbound and northbound. That seems like a lot of time. All right.
Yeah.
Any other comments before I move? I guess the next thing I'm coming across going left to right is this skier. I mean, I'm treating this very vanilla as a ski resort marker here. Is there any other way that you guys have figured out how to treat this image of a skier?
I will say I would take it as an indication of a ski resort as well. I'm now being Cody contradicting everything that I have said because I don't know how else to speak to anything. But a couple things that I picked up on Discord. One being someone had measured the angle between the skis, which I thought was kind of interesting. It jumped out to me because I was thinking like the full circle approach. So I kind of had angles on my mind. And then the like highlighted section beneath the skis, beneath his boots, felt different. And that same kind of like highlighted area maybe ties in with a couple other components on the map. The like handle of the bushel is another example. So I don't know, it felt intentional to treat those a little bit differently.
Interesting. Okay.
Silver treatment, I guess I will call it.
Silver treatment. Silver treatment theme. Interesting. Okay, cool.
But yeah, as far as what else to make of the skier, no clue.
Yeah, I was also pretty vanilla on it. My only takes were, yeah, some sort of ski resort or ski related thing. The only other thing I could think of is if there maybe was any sort of like famous location of like a one-off ski event, like something that's not really a formal ski area, but like one of those Red Bull just parachute in and someone did something famous that was in the news. But
Right.
again, just a landmark that's ski related is as far as I've gotten into that one.
Yeah, maybe you could consider because he has a backpack. He or she, I guess, has a backpack on. That it might be. Maybe it's backcountry skiing. So if there's research we can do into, like you're saying, very similar to what you're saying, Cody, about some famous backcountry skiing in this neck of the woods. But that
Was
I think is even a
was
stretch.
Lake Placid, was that a Winter Olympics?
Yes.
So I guess maybe if that wasn't indicated, this certainly does not look like an Olympic skier. It's very much
Mm-hmm.
like a backcountry skier. But I guess in general, I would like to ask you guys if you just gut if you feel like this is going to be more north or south on the Appalachian Trail. I guess maybe more than your gut feeling. Like to me, I'm picturing this being more north, based off of maybe the proximity to where I'm or where we can pretty much gather the Pokemon box would be.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like to spread out, maybe this would be more of a northern state. Do you guys have opinions on that?
That's where I've been focusing. I think most of my
On
effort for that reason is, if there is going to be a New England box, this seems like the most likely candidate so far, just
Mhm.
based on our, first passes at lion share states at least. I don't think we've ever had really a focus on the New England, northeastern United States. So I think that's a reasonable assumption to make right now is that this would be more northern on the Appalachian Trail. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I've got like three areas that I keep gravitating towards. Like I'm like going out of my way to try and get away from them, and I keep ending up back at them. And I think the southernmost one is like Virginia area. So I think I'm also pretty
Okay.
north.
All right. We move on to this cougar.
I guess
Cougar.
this in itself feels like maybe a hint at more of a northern state as well.
Why do you think that?
I picture them being more than north. I don't know. Can you picture like a mountain lion being in Georgia, South
Yes,
Carolina?
it's interesting that you ask that because that would be more like a puma, and cougar,
Mm.
just because we're kind of more northwestern people, is like the term we use. And I look, did you try Googling like Cougar Mountain? Anybody?
No.
I'm aware that there are many cougar mountains.
When I did it, always moved the map towards the west coast. I couldn't find any
Hmm.
references to Cougar Mountains or anything like that. And so I think it's maybe more of a geographical terminology that you use. So I looked up different synonyms for a mountain lion, which I think probably is the most general that maybe everybody would use that terminology. Mountain lion, cougar, puma, panther. So if you think about pumas and panthers, like the Florida Panthers, I think pumas and panthers seem to be more southern terms. And I honestly don't know if there are different species or not, even. Um, if mountain lion is a general term and there's more specific species names for these things, I'm not sure. I haven't done the deep dive into that. But ones I was not familiar with when I did this search were catamount, Catamount, catamount is a term, and painter was another common term. And so I did have pretty good luck finding like Painter Mountain and Catamount Mountains on the East Coast near the Appalachian Trail.
I also ran into a lot of just general
Okay.
wildcat, that term for different landmarks. Wildcat Mountain, Wildcat, lots of things.
According to a quick Google search, AI says that a puma, cougar, and mountain lion are the same name for the same species of large cat.
Okay. So this one is really a rabbit hole to go down to if you're trying to connect terminology, is what I found. I found just because they were interesting, I found, Catamount Mountain Resort in Massachusetts, Catamount State Forest in Massachusetts, Catamount Creek in Virginia, and then there was two mountains called Painter Mountain in Virginia. Sorry, Catamount Creek is also in Virginia, if I misspoke there. But, going through my approach to say, because these are images, you can translate them or interpret them very differently. That's the reason I went down that synonym rabbit hole for this one in particular.
Hearing you say that also made me think, and I'm not familiar with this geography at all, but like the Catskills in New York,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if the trail intersects with that region at all.
That's a good one. I didn't think that. I did not consider that.
Also, I mean, the very first thing I thought of was like Penn State.
Mm-hmm.
That I guess feels maybe too obvious. I like your connections better, I will say.
I don't know. I think I like your connections better just because I haven't thought of them. The Nittany Lions. That's the Penn State, I believe.
What's a Nittany?
I don't know. I've never thought about it before. Okay.
All of our West Coast knowledge is not good for this box.
Cougars. All right. Cody, we haven't heard your opinions on this yet, I don't think.
Wildcat. Wildcat's most of my connections I made when looking for things was Wildcat.
All right. Should we move on to the next item?
Yes.
Moving on.
So we got a whole bundle of goodies here.
Oh boy.
We have this light colored text that it's pretty clearly says point, and then I think you can squint and interpret high point is what's written here, just above and to the left of the smaller triangle on the map.
Yeah,
so,
I also gathered high point.
Anyway, my Google was, what's the highest point on the Appalachian Trail? It's Klingman's Dome, also known as Kuwohi, at 6,643 feet. It's located in Great Smoky Mountains National Park on the North Carolina and Tennessee border. But again, I don't know if all of these pieces don't really, I'm running into the problem that Cody described earlier, which is, how do you scale these things? And worse off, how do you make sense of all of them to use the right terminology for trying to put these pieces together? And I really liked your analogy of 10,000 people taking a limited set of words and synonyms, and one person hasn't come up with the correct combination. Maybe they have, but maybe that's too simple of an approach. So,
and it's such a roller coaster of emotion because you can pretty much pick anywhere along the trail and hit 2 or 3 or 4 things that match something on the map. And then you get all excited, and then you're like, oh, I can't find any more. And you go somewhere else, so you get all excited again with 3 or 4 different ones. And yeah, it's like just enough that you always feel close to being on the trail, and then just get rejected over and over and over.
Yeah, I kind of had 2 approaches here. My first being, like, if we have identified a region that we're looking at, like, what is the highest point of that region? And then maybe this other number that we'll talk about, like, maybe that's in relation to the highest elevation, as an example. And that speaks to where the treasure box is specifically elevation-wise. Contradicting myself entirely, high point State Park in New Jersey. The trail
Yeah.
runs through that. Again, I don't think there's going to be anything you can just Google. The one argument here is it's very hard to see high.
Right.
So maybe that is one that you could Google as a reward for seeing High Point. High Point is the summit of Kittatinny Ridge. Maybe a kitty instead of a cougar.
All right.
I just thought of that now.
Wow.
It's the highest. It's the highest point in New Jersey at 1,803 feet. So I guess if that's the highest point, then maybe in relation to this other elevation that we're getting, that could be like a treasure box location.
Interesting. Yeah, I think next to High Point is this X here that we can talk about. I don't know if you had other High Point thoughts, Cody.
Yeah. Keep talking.
So the X here, in my opinion, seems to be the most prominent X based on the font and size. I know there's some larger X's kind of in the periphery of some of the map regions, but this one seems to be drawn kind of in the same size and font as the text below it, which is the 1727 Northeast. So that elevation is actually pretty interesting, Bryn, because of its closeness in terms of, you said 1,800 some feet for the High Point in New Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
This would suggest you could go down to 1,727 feet in a northeast direction from that point, and maybe that leads you to the treasure.
Right.
I'd be surprised if somebody hasn't tried that yet.
Right.
So I also had High Point State Park, and I had a couple different High Point. I think most of them are actually related to High Point State Parks, but just landmarks called High Point something.
Okay.
So I found those, and then I cherry picked like 3 locations on the map that were at elevation 1727.
Okay.
Not necessarily like a High Point elevation 1727. It just became, this was the end of the night and I was starting to fall asleep. So it was kind of that's the reason I had to go quiet there, I didn't write it down. I wanted to go back and make sure that I was not saying something. I had to double check. Yeah, so I did some like spot checking of some 1727's elevations along the map, hoping there were high points in certain areas, but yeah, I was not fruitful there. I was it's my Hail Mary before bed a few nights ago. Yeah, the X is intriguing.
Just thinking about this now, the font that's used for High Point, it's only here and in one other location on the map where it says AT in the bottom left, which I'm assuming is Appalachian Trail. I guess I haven't thought too much about other meanings of AT there, which maybe you guys have, but maybe that's a sync point that we can use as like, these are the two formalized or one scale of a map that you can use based on the font that's being used here, potentially. I'm just thinking aloud right now. But maybe that's one way to level set. I don't know if there's a way to level set the images if they're drawn in different manners. I think they all look pretty similar. I think the bear is a little bit derpy, but the other things seem to be like drawn in a similar fashion.
Yeah, I agree.
But if you're level, I know that you're just kind of talking through this as we go here, but if you level set to High Point, and you're saying what, like it's High Point State Park?
Maybe
High point on the highest point of the trail.
Okay, but then you're scaling that to just the other one's just AT.
Would
be like the start of the Appalachian Trail.
Yeah, or what if this is flipped and it's the Atlantic Ocean?
Wow. What if it's really flipped and it's Antarctica?
Oh my. What if it's Alpha Centauri? I was just trying to zoom further out. Sorry.
It was good.
Anyway, how can we get more information out of the limited set of a dozen things we have here, right? And why is this font not handwritten in? Why is it printed font?
Also
Just
interesting that we have the small x relatively close. Like that small x seems like it's definitely tied more to this other small text than High Point itself. But then the big AT has two very large X's over it.
Yeah, I have thoughts on that, but I think I'm going to wait till we get to
okay.
the AT part of the map.
Yeah.
Um, so it seems to me like I think that this X seems to be like in the very same handwriting as the 1727
Yeah.
Northeast. So I think that should mean something. I'm also wondering, my guess would be that there's kind of two takes on where you're supposed to search for the treasure, and that would either be this triangle or that X. Do you
Hmm.
guys have a gut feeling one way or the other?
I think
I
it's the
guess
X.
I would think like the triangle would be your end of the trail, and then heading off to find the box off the trail.
Maybe you walk 1,727 steps northeast once you leave the
Hmm.
trail. Seems
I mean
like a
that
lot of steps.
that would kind of be the direction though. If we're thinking of this map as north, and if you turned it 45 degrees, it would still fit a northeast direction.
Mm-hmm.
I really struggle with how this, what appears to be NE is written, because it almost looks like you could also have an IVM. Like, is there any
Hmm.
world that these are Roman numerals? It just bothers me, I guess, that there's the I or the N is kind of split into an I and a V.
Right. It's a little
And
problematic.
the E is a little odd. Like you could also look at it upside down, right? And have like 3N. I don't know.
Okay.
Those I guess those two characters in themselves just keep standing out to me as bothersome.
Yeah.
Where I think initially I would agree that it's supposed to look like Northeast, but I'm not 100% convinced that's what it is.
Okay. That's a good suggestion, actually.
And that
Yeah, I
two
like
in the
that.
1727 also looks like it kind of has that same division of lines as the N. So I guess I don't know if there's more to if we're supposed to be reading it a different way or from different angles.
Right. think I think this level of detail, it's easier to see that. I think maybe in the book it's maybe more clearly an NE, but no, you
Yeah.
could definitely see that gap there as well. That's a really good thought.
Yeah, it seems like the gap's on purpose. I think I'm on board with Bren that there's more to that N than just being an N.
The other
What it
thing
means, who knows?
I looked up was the date 1727 or the year 1727, and using NE as New England.
Hmm.
And the only thing I could find that seemed prominent was when Fort Oswego was founded, which is kind of in the northern section of New York. That was kind of a historical event that I could find in that time period. But that seemed very far away from the Appalachian Trail, in my opinion.
Yeah, I like the idea of using it as a date.
Yeah, me too. Some just anything we can get out of this that's something other than a landmark just
Mm-hmm.
makes it, like I said, in order for it to be small enough to have like a small enough search area, it's so hard to get that many different landmarks. If you have things on here that aren't landmarks but are other information, I think that would be good. um, so the triangles. There's a triangle at the beginning where it says begin here. I'm sure we'll talk about it in a second. And this is the triangle at the end.
Right.
If you don't mind pulling up my picture I sent you, Blake, called
Oh, sure.
Triangle. I got pretty excited about this for half a second. On Google Maps, scouring Google Maps.
Ooh.
So it's like I found this shaded area, and the Appalachian Trail goes through that shaded area where it transitions from, I don't even know, like public lands to some other parkland. And it's like pretty much the exact shape of that triangle at the end. So I was excited about that, but zooming in and out quite a bit for a little while, and going different distances the other direction on the trail, I couldn't find any other similar triangles that would match up with the begin here one. But oh man, if I would have found another thing like that was like a reasonable distance for the begin here one, to be buying plane tickets. I got excited about that triangle for a second, because it really is like
That's close.
the shape and in the orientation.
Oh,
The same orientation as the book when you're looking at the book too.
interesting.
Just about.
Yeah, just about.
Yeah,
Yes,
if you.
perfect.
Yeah.
That's a great
Yeah,
find.
that's a really good one.
What state is this in? Do you know, Cody?
I don't know. I've looked at so many landmarks on the Appalachian Trail in the last week.
All right. Oh, I like
I'm
that
just
a lot.
happy I screenshotted it.
Yeah.
There's enough information on there to find it. But
All right.
But yeah, that seemed like, because I was always wondering what these triangles are. They seem so out of place, and that seemed like a really good example of something that it could be and that would make logical sense.
Yeah, that's excellent.
One thing I think, I'm pretty sure I read this on Discord. I didn't even look into it, but I just saw it. Someone was talking about like folding the map to bring these two flat edges together, because they are, I want to say maybe they're not parallel. They could be parallel. And so it's almost like they don't look parallel.
No, they're close, but it doesn't look like they're perfectly parallel.
Okay. Well, if they were, then I would be more inclined to like want to bring them together. But
join the triangles. I like that. I have not thought about folding at all.
But then why are they different sizes?
Line them up.
Wrong box.
I mean, they are showing kind of folds a little bit with the patina here. That could be a clue. Interesting. Think about that a bit more.
Yeah, so I didn't give it really any thought, but I just thought it was a good creative idea.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. I wrote this in my notes, this little claw thing that I'm circling here.
Oh.
Do you guys think that's anything?
I took it as more of an overall like foresty scene. Like that is the base of a tree.
Okay.
And there's foliage on top of that, and then like kind of more tree to the right. Like I took this as a general forest scene. But now that you're zoomed in, is that 2 extra dashes?
Like here?
Just to your left. So between the dashed line right there and up above.
Oh yeah, there's like a little bit of remnant dashed lines.
2 dashes.
Like. Yeah. I don't know if you'd be able to see that in the book. It's always my litmus test.
I can see it.
Okay.
I didn't have any of that on my radar. Like anything between the bear and the northeast 1727.
Okay.
All of that stuff was noise when I was just looking at it in the book, but I could see something there potentially.
Yeah,
I'm not 100% sold.
It definitely looks like the same pen stroke in these 2 shadows that we're seeing here. That was just Jon Collins-Black putting some whiteboard marker on his picture and then erasing it.
Yeah, or when it gets on the side of your hand and then you move your hand.
That's right.
That's what he did.
Interesting. Anyway, I just want to point those out. I don't have a good explanation. Just getting your guys' opinion. I like your forest scene. I can see what you're seeing from that, Bryn, and I guess cross-referencing the book, it's also visible, certainly. It's interesting. So something to keep in mind.
Earlier along the trail, there's a tree in a magnifying glass that says look around. Maybe you're literally supposed to look harder and find that tree there versus something in real life.
Interesting. Okay.
Maybe.
Right. Should we go down to the derpy bear?
Derpy bear.
I mean, that is a completely different artistic style than the rocks next to it, and I would argue that the rocks next to it are similar artistic styles to all the other images, in my opinion.
Right. Yeah, I agree. The bear is definitely more like soft.
So, and then yeah,
Is that
there's an arrow pointing here to this part of the trail. Why? I don't know.
Yeah, the arrows have been driving me nuts. I'm very vanilla on the bear. It's more of just like Bear Mountain stuff like that.
Right.
But I've seen 3 arrows on the map that are all like the same line weight, same font, I guess, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And those are driving me nuts because that just looks like you just pick 3 random spots and
Right.
draw arrows, and it's like, what am I doing with this? I don't even know where to start. The
Right.
only thing I thought of that I thought was kind of creative and also very much wrong is that there's an up and a right and another up. And I thought potentially, again, looking for metaphors in the pictures that are something other than just a landmark, I thought the feather could be down.
Okay.
So I thought it was creative, but also wrong.
And these, in my mind, could potentially be boots on the ground if you're going along the theorem that the dotted line trail map is a different scale than everything else. You know, maybe that indicates a signpost that you're supposed. Maybe there's an intersection there, and you're supposed to go up or straight at that point.
Yeah, and I guess if you're kind of treating the map where like the different line weights or maybe different layers that would be at different scales, I think that these 3 arrows would probably tie in with that 1727 northeast and X. I think that those are
Agreed.
pretty similar line weights again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So maybe we can deal with the scale issue by kind of breaking this out into multiple layers that are all overlaid on the same map.
Right. Right. So maybe the
And
triangles.
Derpy bears his own layer.
So maybe it's maybe this dotted line trail is indicating mountain to mountain, like let's say medium zoom, a medium zoom level. That's placing you in a limited region. Why the arrows are pointing to that dotted line, though, kind of argues against that. I guess we can discuss when we see the other examples of that as well. Yeah, but why is the bear so close to these rocks? You know, I was looking for bear rocks, something like that. Again, Googling just keywords, which may not be fruitful, but the rocks here seemingly make an interesting pattern that there seems to be a lineup of them, and they go off into the distance, right? Kind of this way this is portrayed. But they just look like regular old rocks to me.
I would say the rocks, and maybe this is helping us distinguish between layers, but I would say that they only make sense when you rotate the map 45 degrees, because they look like, then they look like actually like sitting on ground versus whatever they are now, floating
falling off a cliff. Yeah. A rolling stone gathers no moss. But it turns the map the wrong direction from what Bryn and I were talking about earlier, because we'd be turning it 45 degrees counterclockwise, and then 45 degrees clockwise to make the top corner north, where it said car north. So they'd be even more upside down.
Yeah.
But
unless
if we're looking at the AT at the bottom left, that is oriented where you would turn it the other direction. So I'm wondering if there's some sort of circular motion that you have to make here, depending on which part of the map you're looking at, to make it make sense.
Make it make sense.
Full circle.
Full circle.
I'm thinking, are we supposed to rotate the map to match these arrows. Like, do we start with it up? You
Ah.
begin here, and then you flip it to go north would be like the edge of the page, which would make those rocks go flat. And then after you pass the rocks and the bear, then you flip it to go back north. The normal orientation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that idea.
I'm not remembering where the third arrow is, Cody. You said there's 3 of them?
One's by the bald man, one's under the dog.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Thank you. The bald man one was the one I was missing. So, all right.
I also, for the
Yeah.
bear, I wanted to add, I guess I don't know how old, or don't remember how old his son was when he was making his map, but this seems too good for a child's drawing, but too poor for this map. I guess I think maybe a callback to, is this how his son would draw a bear? Since we have related it back to the initial map.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. I like that. I like that perspective. Good idea. All right. I've covered the weird claw, the bear, the rocks, arrow pointing to the path. Let's start moving left again. So here's your begin here with a bunch of goodies.
Let's start with the northernmost one, because that's
Okay.
another one that I had not registered as anything significant. But
This little
I would
impurity
hazard to
here.
guess that other people might have. Yes.
So just to the upper left of the begin here triangle. That to me on first pass looked like it could be like a screenshot of a satellite image. That could be a marker potentially if you find the right location. But it would have to, in my mind, it looks pretty zoomed out. But that's how I've interpreted it so far.
I saw people on Discord calling it a fossil.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
We actually had someone also write in about it. This was weeks ago at this point, maybe months. Lisa wrote into us and she told us that she thought this looked like a lipstick kiss, which was interesting because there was a famous Appalachian Trail journaler that wrote under the name lipstick. So I just wanted to throw that out there as well as an interpretation for this.
Okay.
Very mysterious image.
Yeah.
If we were talking layers, that might be a candidate for one that's on the same layer as the bear.
Yeah.
Why do you think that?
Seems kind of just like almost like watercolor brushed and like less distinct than some of the other ones that have like a darker line weight.
Yeah.
I don't have the artistic language to describe what I'm trying to say, but they look the same to me.
It's not a pen or pencil drawing here. Ink
Yeah,
drawing.
there's like the background, then there's kind of like a stained pattern, and then there's almost like what we would call like this watercolor.
Yeah, there's more of a translucence to it in the bear than the other ones.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. I like that lipstick one now, kind of.
Same with the footprints. It's the same, similar as the footprints.
True.
Yeah, that's a good point.
We're making progress. Solved.
Solved.
All right, butterfly.
Face value for me. Butterfly Mountain Monarch.
Okay, so let me get my notepad out here.
Oh boy. Someone's got someone heavy in the butterfly.
From the Discord, from Indiana Holmes, and this was like late November when this came from. He says it kind of looks like a catadin butterfly. There's an Arctic catadin butterfly, and catadin is the name of the terminus mountain of the Appalachian Trail. And so he linked that with this dog, which could be a Springer Spaniel, which is the beginning of the Appalachian Trail, Springer Mountain. So I
Dang
like
it.
that.
That was my big mic drop, is that I had
Oh
also
no.
found that.
Oh no.
Got stolen.
I'm sorry, Cody.
So okay, I was also gonna mention that.
Okay.
So it's a fact.
Well, it's an interesting connection, but having the
It
beginning
is.
and the end of the
Right.
Appalachian Trail so close, like that's not very helpful in my mind.
Unless the scale's real different than we're expecting.
Right, but it's not
What kind of
helpful
what
if
kind
we
of
already
butterfly was he saying?
cata catadin. It's Kataahdin, which is the same name as the mountain at the end of the Appalachian Trail in Maine.
So originally, I was I was taking like the bald as a specific one of the Bald's mountains, and then um, the blue smoky stuff as the Smoky Mountains, and then I used the butterflies Dollywood for Dolly Parton.
Oh, okay. I had not seen that one. That's a good idea.
There's probably a reason why you haven't seen that one, but it kind of lined up like north of the Smoky Mountains. But I'm getting ahead now, so.
Okay. All right. And then we have our begin here triangle. And yeah,
Which also has weird text. I would say specifically the G.
okay. Yeah. Cody's our handwriting analyst in residence. Any thoughts on that?
It's fine.
Okay, it's
Official,
fine.
official take, it's fine.
I mean, is that the same handwriting, I guess, as Car North?
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
H is, yeah, very similar. I mean,
Confirmed.
we could just assume that this is all JCB if he's the only one that knows and design these things. So,
Chicken scratches. Also, can we go back to the butterfly really quick? The
oh yeah,
two, that silvery texture, there's two little specks of that same silvery texture around the
yeah,
butterfly.
interesting.
Or
Yeah,
three. Is there three?
there's three. Yeah, there's 1, 2, 3, and then there's kind of
Yeah.
one in the wing as well, which could be a remnant of him trying to make this butterfly transparent in Photoshop, right?
Yeah.
And there's just a little bit of leftover remnant, but yeah, certainly there seems to be 3 distinct white dots that 1 you can easily see by eye, 2 and 3 you might be able to see with magnification on the book for better lighting.
Like, I guess there's also a couple specks up by the lipstick. Maybe they're just in a bunch of spots, and I'm
Yeah.
not.
Any thoughts about these 6 smudges here next to the butterfly?
Nothing specific, but they must mean something. They're almost like in a star orientation.
Yeah. Dollywood.
I don't know. Some of this is just going to be texture, right? Because if he
Right.
only did these drawings, it would just look weird. He just have to have some texture. I would lean towards those dots are part of that texturing.
Okay.
No. Those are too intentional.
Part of the texturing. Hard stance. Heels dug in.
Scott.
Yeah, I don't know. I think of all the textures that you're gonna dismiss, that's not a good one.
We've all been too agreeable this episode. I'm throwing the gauntlet down.
All right. Should we talk
I've
about the
decided to die on the hill of these are texture only.
So I do want to talk about the begin here triangle,
Okay.
since we talked about this in a prior episode. But if you didn't listen to that one, we had someone write in talking about how the begin here triangle really pretty much perfectly lines up with the triangle on the Pokemon box. Or sorry, not the Pokemon box, but the Japanese puzzle box. And if you look at the back of the book, on the back cover, you can see that instance of the triangle, and it kind of has like a rough edge that's overlaid the red section of the back of the book, which is a graphic pulled from this map because you can see the little bushel of apples. we had talked about this in that episode before, that we don't know if this could be the connection that it initially looks like it is. The part 2 boxes don't include like the back cover or anything. You wouldn't have the context of the Japanese puzzle box. But I do want to call that out because it is pretty similar.
It is, yeah.
That's on the dust jacket, right? On the back cover?
Yes, it's on the dust
Yes.
jacket, which that image is
Yeah,
not
thank
included
you.
in the ebook versions of the Appalachian Footpath Box. Right.
I had in kind of my partially general notes, but it's really applicable to this, is I find it very interesting that he's got so much text from begin here, and then the first two very quick icons there where you got begin here, go fetch, look around, and then for basically the rest of like on trail or near trail stuff, there's no words anymore. It's almost like two different kinds of instruction.
Right.
Like I'd expect each one to have like a little quip with it, but he like started with all these little quips and then just stopped almost immediately. So I found that interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't have a good explanation for this. You think this is a magnifying glass, is what how you described this earlier, Cody?
That's tree. What I thought. So for my take and my notes here is, I think, and I could be wrong, but I thought it was like kind of like a treasure hunting trope to like see a specific tree from a distance that you can like only see from one angle. It's like the lone tree. In my mind, that's like a treasure hunting trope. And so I guess my initial take on it, like right at the beginning, was, okay, you're going to follow the first 10% of this trail. And then from this vantage point, which is probably going to be like a high up point, you need to identify this lone tree that you're going to see that's like basically at the end of the trail. And then that's where you're going to end up when you follow this whole trail. And that's like ends up being like one of the last landmarks that you end up at before you kind of do your final search. That was kind of what it was indicating to me, based on, again, kind of loose ideas of what classic treasure hunting tropes are.
Okay.
But I don't have super strong feelings about that. That's just kind of my gut reaction when I first saw it.
It does look like it's reflecting on water, is how I'm interpreting that.
And then I guess my other point would be, the alternative is you're looking around for a specific tree that's 10% into the trail, and then who cares? Why are you doing that? How's that going to help you to identify a specific tree 10% of the way through the trail? So that was my other reason.
You don't have to hike all the way out the trail. This would be your indication that you're on the right track. You're at the right trailhead.
Yeah. All right. You always have good explanations.
I don't know what the dog means though, and you guys are more dog people than I am.
And why go fetch? It's like, if we're doing this just icons, interpret it for yourself thing, how is go fetch helping in any way?
Or I don't have a good counter to that.
I took that as like specifically a bird hunting dog. Like if you were to hunt birds, you'd have it go fetch your bird.
Okay.
So Lisa, who wrote in about the lipstick, also included, which this confirmed my bird hunting dog. She said there was a famous hiker named Bird Dog. Kind of in theme with her, characters of the Appalachian Trail component.
Right.
So
that's the third instance if we're considering the barefoot hikers as well. It's
I was about to say the exact same thing. What if each one of these icons is like is a reference to a famous person who hiked the Appalachian Trail?
Right. Huh. That's kind of interesting.
We have to find the derpy bear hiker, famous hiker.
We have to find a bald guy who hiked the Appalachian Trail.
No sunblock.
Dolly Parton.
All right, that's an interesting theme now that we have three of them.
Yeah, I like that idea. Also, the dog is kind of by begin here. And the dog's I believe, a Springer Spaniel. And at the beginning of the Appalachian Trail, there's Springer Mountain. So I thought that was quite a coincidence. Thank you.
A round of applause.
Thank you.
Sorry, Cody. That's my
Isn't
bad.
that a good? Isn't that a good? A good clue, Bryn?
Yes, that was very good. I will say, you found that yourself?
I did, yeah.
Yeah, well, that's good. I only found it on Discord, so that is a very good find. Good job.
Thanks. I Google Maps scrolled the entire Appalachian Trail.
No.
Yeah.
Oh no.
I don't know. That could be highly valuable. Good context. More than I've done.
Plus a couple of times I went onto the wrong side trail for a while and then figured out and had to backtrack and find my trail again.
Remember years ago when people did like that whole road trip across the United States just by clicking through the street view on Google Maps? It's like Cody got street view of the trail. It's click, 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 click.
I
walked the whole thing
barefoot. All right, let's go to the controversial arrow. I mean, it's not it's not the greatest arrow, especially if you're just using the book. But I think I agree with Bryn that that's maybe what it's supposed to represent, is an arrow.
Oh no, 100% it is. I just didn't look that closely at it. I'm not arguing that it's an arrow.
Okay.
I looked at it from 2 feet away. Went, that's weird that he has 2 different feathers. One must be an eagle and one must be a hawk.
Right.
I did not look closely at it. So none of my solves got to the point where that what I thought was feather that was towards the end was ever in question.
Okay.
That being said, no comments on this one. I just realized it's not a feather 20 minutes ago.
So there was one solve that I was barely working on a while back, and the like compass orientation, which I think is kind of not uncommon, is almost pointed like north. Is almost looks like a little arrow pointing north, like a little Cupid's arrow almost is the representation for as the compass.
Okay.
And so it is interesting that this arrow, I mean, generally points kind of to that same corner if we're calling that north. So I guess in my head, like, if I think of it just literally as an arrow, is this another arrow? Is it supposed to be pointing us somewhere?
Right. This is not the red herring one. This is a true north, which would just be confirmation bias for our car north. But yeah, I don't know how else to use this other than I've kind of chalked it up to boots on the ground. I'm wondering if this particular pattern of the feathers is indicative of a certain type of bird species. I have not looked into that.
Yeah, I've got nothing else on the arrow, I guess.
Right.
How about like Indian reservation land?
Yeah.
Yeah, it does have like a Native American feeling to it.
Yeah. That's my first thought after having just learned that it's a spear. Is that what you said? Spear?
Arrow.
Yeah. After just learning it's an arrow and not a feather, that would be my first guess.
Okay. Oops, sorry. Guess we can go down a little bit. And so, did you guys make anything out of this strange object here?
No. In my head, I reference, like in my head, it's a bone. But I have no idea what that is.
Okay. Me neither. I was hoping you guys had a clever solution to that. If it's anything.
No.
Okay.
I think if you gave me multiple choice on what it is, I'd still get it wrong.
Okay. All right, Cody, take it away. What do you think?
Smoky Mountains.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess I also took this as smoke. I mean, it has the blue component of it, which fits with the Smoky Mountains. Um, the only thing I don't like about that is that it brings us more south, and I just feel like this is going to be a box more to the north.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what else? I don't know. What else could that be?
Smoke,
Yeah,
wisp.
I think it's a wisp of smoke is how I've listed it.
Yeah.
This ink
Maybe
blot next to it seems, looking at this now, seems like this could be interesting.
Yeah, that's another. I agree, Cody, that you do just have to have some texture in here, and a lot of it is just that. But I think this one in particular is another instance of it being something. I don't know. Is that a body of water? Is that a lake?
ooh, you're really not going to like when I say that. I think that's texture, and I think that the 6 dots to the left of the wisp are just texture too.
No, no, those 6 dots have Cody.
There's too many things. It's just texture.
Oh my
There's
gosh.
dots. Just
I mean,
dots.
I mean that's very prominent in the book version as well. Those
Yes.
dots.
Prominent texture.
I
But
read someone say maybe it's like birds migrating a direction, north or south.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that's something where you're gonna have to have a better sense of, like, more of a confirmer once you kind of have a good location. Maybe that's a confirmer.
Mm-hmm.
I will make you a high stakes $1 bet when this is solved. If JCB says this is just texture, you owe me $1, and if it's part of a clue, I'll give you $1.
For this
I'd
one
like to.
or for all of the ones we've discussed?
I'm doing just these 6 dots.
Just these 6 dots. Okay.
You are so confident. Let's up it to a blizzard, please. A Dairy Queen blizzard. High
Deal.
stakes. Okay.
Since you only ever get minis, and that's pretty much just $1 anyway.
Mm.
And somehow you still make it last like 3 weeks. It's 2 bites ice cream.
M&M blizzard. Write in if you have a strong argument. Otherwise, not possible.
All right. Bald man. I think it seems
Yeah,
like we're in agreement that
the
this is
balds.
representing a bald guy.
And I hate that we are, because it's one of those things where I feel like if no one said it, I might have come up with something else. And I'm worried that now it's just like groupthink.
Yeah.
Because now I can't think of anything other than a bald guy. But I also think if no one said that, I might have thought of something else at first. So I'm bummed I heard about bald guy before I made my own opinion on that one.
Okay.
I don't know what else it could possibly be. Like at first, I think, well, why are we showing the back of his head? But you can't really represent visually baldness only from the front.
Yeah.
You can, but not as strong.
It'd be less obvious, yeah. But it seems like in my mind that's the right interpretation of this, just because exactly what you're saying, Bryn. Why would it show it from the back?
Coming off of the bow and arrow, it would probably be too off brand and grisly for that to be like a scalped person.
Ew.
I think that would be a little grisly, yes.
I
But
don't know.
it's
So I mean, it
at least
kind of fits.
at least it's an alternative thought, which is good.
I don't know if that's like, I think there were like prominent, well documented like battles where that kind of stuff happened, right? In that area.
Mhm.
So not fun to talk about, but it could be. I had 2 other theories kind of based off of this assembly of little doodles here.
Okay.
One of them is because of the X's, and the X's are both touching that bald bald icon, and because there's so many instances of bald mountain or bald whatever,
Mm-hmm.
I was wondering if possibly there's kind of 2 balds oriented right next to each other, and that's what like the 2 X's touching the bald icon is.
Okay.
It's also crossing the AT. So, and this is not including the bald part, but I was also wondering if possibly we're supposed to be looking where there's like other significant trails that intersect the Appalachian Trail, in that area because there's the two crosses over AT.
Interesting. Okay.
Plus, it also feels like you'd probably want to be in an area with multiple intersections anyway, just for the number of landmarks you're looking for. It's going to be in kind of, I would assume, a more populated area, an area with more going on than, I know from my scrolling through it on Google Maps that there's quite a few sections where it's just straight Appalachian Trail and not anything really listed.
Okay.
So those are two thoughts that I had.
I just want to go back up to the other section where there's kind of the same style X, let's say, which is up here by the Puma. And I guess there's just one here. Okay. Other thoughts?
I like Cody's ideas on that a lot.
I like both of those, yeah. Much better than I came up with, which was nothing. Other than Alpha Centauri. Okay. All right, we got another feather. These are kind of off the beaten track.
Yeah. Well, I got something. For the feather, one landmark that I really liked, and there was actually a handful of them called the same thing, was there are a handful of bird's nest shelters, but I liked that it was spelled BYRD, bird's nest shelter, and they were numbered like 1, 2, 3, 4, bird's nest shelter.
Okay.
And I like that because it's another instance of like, again, it feels just far enough away from the icon to be like clearly associated with the icon, but also you're not going to get an easy Google search that finds it because it's spelled differently.
Mm-hmm.
So it felt like a good landmark name relative to the icon, like good degree of complexity. So, and the fact that there was a few of them spread out over the Appalachian Trail, it seemed like there was multiple instances where it could line up well with relative to some of the other icons we're looking for.
Yeah. Like that. Any of them happen to be near Jackson Mountain?
I don't remember. I wrote down just enough on all these to find them again if I have to, but I've got so many things written down. It's like, I can't document everything on all of them.
Share this image.
Something good?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, boy. Ooh.
See that? You see that?
My first question would be, how long has that been there?
Right. I don't know.
And does it get changed frequently?
I hope not. That looks like a pretty nice painting.
It looks like it's there for good.
Yeah, too nice. Like it was painted a few months ago.
Right.
Look how shiny the apples are.
I don't know how recently this picture was taken, but I thought that was a really cool connection. That was from the Discord. I did not discover that.
That's good.
It's a water
tower. That would be a cool connection.
Painted as the bushel of apples. It's kind of on the map. And it's in Mount Jackson, which is a city name. A little town.
It's almost too good because I feel like if someone from Mount Jackson got this book and saw that, they'd be like, oh, that's for sure what that is instantly. Yeah. And then just like have it locked in.
Okay, that's fair. Too good.
I do like it. I like it a lot though.
In my Discord exploration, I discovered that the fruit of this bushel is quite the hot topic.
I saw that too.
Holy cow. Based on the scale, people comparing the scale of the fruit to the bushel itself.
Okay.
People have been trying to make it into fruit that's larger or smaller to try to fit the scale with a full bushel. I think my personal stance is those are apples and maybe this is a half bushel. I think we're probably reading too far into it.
You've joined the fray.
I think I'm officially saying that those are apples. I don't know if you guys have any different opinions on what the fruit is.
No, I think it must be.
No, before I was on Discord and saw the same thing that you did. In a previous episode, I talked about how I thought they were apples, and one of my horseshoes and hand grenades, I use that as a representation for, like, I think a Mount Washington, because being from Washington,
Yeah.
we know that apples are kind of big in our state. Could be a good representation for the state. So that seemed like another one at the time where it was like the right level of complexity, where you're not just going to like Google bushel of apples, but with just a small amount of background knowledge, you can kind of find something to make that icon clearly represent something in the real world. So as for the fruit, no, I mean, if we hear about the solve in the future and he's like, oh, those are mini pumpkins or something, I wouldn't like be upset about it.
I
I just
would.
don't know.
That'd be horrible.
I just don't know if we're gaining much by investing too much of our time into that conversation right now.
I do think we should acknowledge the background here. It's like a very highly concentrated level of cracks in the background behind these images. Um, you could argue that there is an X here again, but there's so many lines. I personally keep trying to tie this back to somehow the map of LA that Sun was drawing with like a bunch of roads. I don't know. Could you argue that maybe this is more of like a populated area that you've then moved away to start the hike once you start going more north? I just don't know if there's any connection to this meaning roads or so. I think it means something.
It looks to me, I've been doing a bit of railroad research for the past and future box. And I don't know, the pattern at first glance looks a bit like rail lines in terms of the geometry of them, I would say, but it could also very easily be highways just based on how kind of their shapes. So maybe I'll do a dive on into that a bit more.
I really like that idea in general. I hadn't thought of that being highways or railroads, and talk about giving us an idea of the scale. That would pretty much lock it in right there.
I did drop a picture in like
Mm-hmm.
that somebody on Discord had really highlighted all of the lines, cracks. I'm not quite sure what to call these.
Oh, okay. Yeah, let me
Folds.
pull that up for you guys too.
But it's kind of an interesting visual. Okay. Well, I guess this cuts off the main part, but it gives you an idea that down towards the bottom, there's like more of a concentration of these lines.
Mm-hmm.
Shoot, sorry, I didn't mean to cut that picture off.
That's right. This is from Gerg on Discord. Maybe Greg.
Oh, it was Gerg.
It was Gerg. All right.
Yes.
Let's go back to the whoops. Back to this one. But yeah, that's interesting. I'm gonna just zoom out a little bit. Okay.
And
like
again, those
train of thought.
Ooh, nice. Those two parallel diagonal lines also would point towards our potential north.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The most prominent ones would be north to south if we turn it 45 degrees. All right. Should we talk about the rug?
The bolt of fabric.
Oh, the bolt of fabric. The rolling paper. Or
what do you think it is, Blake?
I think it's like a parchment, and maybe that is the same as a scroll. But I have no idea. I think we need clues zooming in to make sense of that. To me, there's too many things it could be.
Yeah, that one's kind of a neat one because everything else kind of falls into two classifications of either just like very obvious what it is,
Mm-hmm.
or very obvious that we don't know what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And this one's kind of right in the middle where it's like, it's very recognizable, but it's definitely not like we can be 100% sure what it is.
Right.
It's
Neat.
it's better than a wisp of smoke, but not a skier.
It's not a skier. All right.
Yeah, I would just say scroll is my stance on it.
Yeah. Bolt of fabric.
And it's close to the path, though. I've kind of discarded it as a boots on the ground in my mind. All right. That's about it, folks.
Well, I have two. Well, I have like a million half solves where I like found a bunch of things that were just like connecting landmarks, but I have two that I want to talk about because there's something other than just connecting landmarks and kind of cool in a different way. But
great.
You had something to say, Brian?
Well, I had one other specific thing to call out.
Oh, sorry.
Ooh.
I'm sorry.
No, that's good.
Oh, and now I think I just debunked it. Just above the compass, there's 3 dots.
Yep.
And I thought it kind of lined up with there's 3, I don't know, nails, something on top of the box. But now I see a 4th on top of the box. So disregard, but not that that's what that would be anyways. I was just trying to make it into anything. But I do think those 3 dots will be something.
Okay. Second
That's
blizzard bet. That reminded me, there's this little impurity at the bottom here as well, but nothing that I could translate into anything real.
Just an impurity.
Just an impurity. All right. Let's hear your solve, Cody. I'll tell you if I think it's impure or not.
So like I said, I've got a bunch of instances of where like I connected 3 or 4 or 5, things that matched icons all in the relatively the same area. But I don't think it's that interesting to talk about. Because I think that there's a bunch of those cases out there. So there's 2 that I wanted to kind of talk about. I don't think either one are right. I'll say that right now. Well, I know. Yeah, I don't think either one are right, but it kind of illustrates some kind of different ways of thinking in ways, I guess, just something that I found interesting other than just a connection to an icon. So the first one was just a series of connections, but then I also noticed that the closest town that was kind of all it was all around was Doodletown, New York. So I was kind of excited about that because I thought I'm big on this whole connection, coming full circle back to his son's drawings in chapter 1.
Yeah.
So I thought that got me a little bit more excited than usual for that potential solve, that it was Doodletown. And then again, that was also next to a bunch of things like Bear Mountain and stuff, things that matched icons. My favorite one, which I also don't think is right, but this one is kind of the coolest in my mind that I've come across so far. And I found this one by Googling Appalachian Trail and bolt of fabric. Although it has nothing to do with the fabric, though. But I found this old this article about how in 1881 a copper bolt was embedded in a rock to mark one of the high points in an area on the trail. And it was in the Blue Mountains.
Okay.
And then in the 1930s, metal discs were placed in a triangle around the location of the bolt. So old article, got the high point, which is right at like the end of the trail.
Yeah.
In the Blue Mountains, which I thought that was a thing. And then also the fact that then there was this triangle around that bolt kind of was another instance of end of the map triangle that's indicated there, trying to figure out why that's a triangle.
Right.
So that one was kind of cool, but there wasn't enough other information to really track it down or tie other things to it. But I thought that would have been like, that seems like a level of complexity and a level of kind of cool historical research to where it would like be satisfying if that was part of an answer. So
that's super
but
cool.
I don't think that's going anywhere either.
Yeah, I might get that info for you and take a second set of eyes if that's all right.
Yeah, you bet.
Bryn,
Good finds.
Do you have any solves? Disclaimer: I don't. I haven't spent enough time on this to
Um,
come up with even a first attempt at a solve in that I'm pleased with. So.
One that I got kind of excited about was it's called Pulpit Rock and Pinnacle Loop in Pennsylvania. And I guess I was most interested in it because you have this big pinnacle at the top that you're hiking to, which felt like it fit in with High Point. Um, and then also, I guess it's the thing that you're supposed to like take a rock with you and then you add it to this big pile of rocks that's kind of up by the top. So I thought that brought in the rock pile
Mm-hmm.
close to the high point.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's as far as I mean, of course, like I was able to find a ski resort that kind of made sense and yeah, certainly did not have any solves. There's just a few things here and there that I tried to make connections between, but I guess I'm struggling. I'm struggling to try to I want to figure out my approach before I just start spending a lot of time looking around. And I don't feel like I have a confident approach on how to do this one. And maybe it is just what I'm thinking that's not. And you just kind of have to look around and find the things that line up in a creative way. But I don't know. I guess I just feel like there's more to it that I want to reveal before I want to figure out some sort of greater theme with the quote,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe make like the poem or the quote rainbow trail some I want to figure out a broader theme before approaching an actual solve.
Okay. No, I think it's would be wise if you don't dive into the simple clue solving, quote unquote, and keep your approach as a different way to approach this for our team is, I think, very useful. So be on board for that.
Side note, a couple of places that I looked at on Google Maps and looked at like actual pictures from the trail, people had posted pictures of big old rattlesnakes. And so I will not be searching for this box.
Yeah.
I was thinking about it. I was going to bed last night. Snakes are like my one thing. Like I could have spiders crawling on me or anything like that, and not a big deal. But if I see a snake from 100 yards away, I'm getting back on the plane. I'm going home.
I think you'll change your tune if you come up with a solid solve.
Yeah.
All right. Any parting thoughts? I thought that was pretty helpful for me, hearing the different perspectives. So thank you guys.
Yeah, it was better conversation than I was expecting us to have. I have more enthusiasm about it than I previously did, hearing some of your guys' thoughts. So that's good. I think even just the idea of turning this 45 degrees, um, reorienting ourselves with a north. I don't know. It's it's overwhelming to me. I will be continuing to work on Pokemon Box in the meantime. It doesn't have me excited enough yet to pivot from Pokemon Box, but
Mm-hmm.
there are components that are intriguing.
I did think that the having three different instances of icons that pretty clearly matched up with people or like historical
Yeah.
stories of people who had through hiked. I thought that that's something definitely worth looking into more.
Yeah, I like that. Just got to find the bald
Yeah, that seems like it
guy.
should be a fairly easy side quest, I would think. Well, maybe not,
Yeah.
but obtainable.
The classic guy that hiked the trail with a bolt of fabric.
Yeah. Or smoking whatever was rolled up in the thing. Yeah. And that seems like it would be kind of thematic too, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it's a good conversation. I learned a lot from you guys.
All right, we'll wrap it up. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And we will catch you in the next episode, whatever we decide that is. Maybe
Ooh.
Joyce Serenade or book introduction. I don't think we've decided yet, so it will be a surprise. All right, have a good night.